How could we augment doctors? How could we augment teachers and use the power of artificial intelligence to empower humans?
Welcome to Heja Framtiden, the Swedish podcast on the future. We're broadcasting today from Epicenter in Stockholm at SIME 2018. And now I'm here with Joel Hellermark from Sana Labs. Welcome, Joel.
Thank you so much.
What is Sana Labs for those who don't know?
It's essentially AI as a service for education. So we provide machine learning platform for the education industry so that they can easily make use and implement machine learning. And primarily to personalize educational content. So if you're a big publisher or education technology company that wants to recommend the optimal material for each student based on how they learn, what they've already mastered and their knowledge gaps, you can use our simple-to-use APIs to achieve that. So we're essentially bringing the benefits of AI to education.
But are you developing a software yourselves, or are you just providing the platform for other developers?
So we sell, you can see us as sort of Intel inside. We only provide the intelligence for these education companies where they develop the end products and distribute it and develop the content towards the end consumer. And we provide sort of the intelligence that personalizes that and makes it adaptive to each student's needs.
As you talked a bit earlier in a panel about the obstacles that teachers have been facing when it comes to individualizing education. How has that looked in the past, and how will this change in the future?
Yeah, this is a great question. So essentially, we see ourselves augmenting teachers and allowing them to focus more on the areas that matter. So for example, historically, these online learning products have been very rich in data, but very poor in information. And using machine learning, we want to change that. So rather than providing the teachers with even more data to analyze, we can provide them with the key insights. So one example in some of the research we did looking at how teachers solve this currently is that they essentially use Excel and they would try to figure out, did a student perform better or worse than the last exam, which were the areas that they were missing, and then give them material to study based on that. And that's clearly intractable if you have a class of 150 students ultimately. So what we want to do there is to use machine learning to automatically figure out the knowledge gaps, figure out what are the areas that the student should practice on, and provide them with the material that they need, as well as the teachers with that insights. So one example there is like identifying and addressing knowledge gaps. Another area which is really interesting is for students that are learning new languages. So if you're trying to learn to speak English, for example, for a teacher to provide feedback on your pronunciation, that's a very sort of time-intensive task. And speech recognition is an area we've gone very far in artificial intelligence. And we could essentially use speech recognition to automatically provide students with feedback on their pronunciation and how to improve. So that's another area which is really interesting.
And I heard you at a previous talk. You mentioned the sort of perfect balance between when tasks become too difficult and when they become too easy. You had a sort of 70% line there in between. How did you come up with that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So essentially, for material to be at an optimal difficulty level, you want it to be challenging, but not the students to get stuck on it. And we found on average across all students on one of the data sets that students that had around 70% probability of getting the questions correctly stayed the most engaged. So that was not too hard and not too easy. However, that can be highly unique for a specific student, for specific material. So you want to learn that over time. What is optimal for this student? You also want to compare it with learning outcomes. So in a lot of the educational research, you've seen that when students are very challenged, that's when they learn the most. So you also have to compare that to what are the actual learning outcomes as a function of the engagement.
Do you think we will see less exams in the future and more like continual work where you progress on a sort of scale, so to speak?
Yeah, it's a great point. I think just looking at it from first principles, exams make no sense at all, because what you should be doing is continuously measuring the students' abilities and do that on a sort of much richer spectrum. And currently you take these sort of one-off exams every now and then, which doesn't say very much about that student's ability to learn new concepts, and might not say a lot about their current proficiency either. So I think over time, using these digital systems, you'd have continuous exams. You'd have exams every single day, measuring what the student has mastered and making sure that they reach 100% mastery. Because that's another factor which has been very prevalent historically, is that students are fine if they pass 75% of the exam. And that really should not be the case. In particular, if you look at mathematics, where most of the upcoming concepts are built upon previous concepts. Meaning that if you miss some of the fundamentals, you'll sort of accumulate knowledge gaps over time, and it will become increasingly difficult. So I think we're going to switch to continuous assessments, and where you start expecting 100% mastery rather than living with the fact that students can have sort of 75% mastery.
What kind of companies are using your technology now, and what kind of schools are using it?
So among other companies, we have NE in Sweden, which is focused on math. So NE has adopted our technology to provide this personalized learning material based on your students' proficiency, their needs for remediation, etc. So NE is one use case in Sweden. We've also been collaborating with Sweden's largest programming bootcamp called Academy, where students essentially master programming in 3 months. And there you could imagine that the effectiveness of the program has to be very high. And that's another use case where they've used our technology to augment the teachers, so that teachers doesn't have to every single day present personalized material to every student, but could focus more on the mentoring and more advanced, sort of rather than conceptual understanding, you can focus more on discussions, group assignments, etc. So our use cases are very diverse, ranging from programming boot camps for re-education to math education for year 4 to 5 students.
But do you deal directly with schools as well?
No, so we license our technology to publishers and education companies. So we see it as sort of the full education industry over time. There won't be any companies that aren't using artificial intelligence to provide personalized education. There won't be any online education in the future which is not personalized. And someone has to create the engine that will power that. And that's really what we want to focus on. We want to focus on the machine learning aspects and let the publishers who are exceptional in the content development take care of content development, user experience, and distribution, where we focus on the intelligence to power that.
But is data integrity an issue? Is that an obstacle for growing?
Yeah, I think the GDPR regulation came in very handy and very timely in terms of our founding. So we've also always had to be compliant with GDPR and really protect the integrity of the users on these platforms. So we've been compliant with GDPR since day one, and that has been a very, very good tool, and I really appreciate that tool being developed.
So do you think in the future that parents could log on to the school network and see exactly where the students are in different subjects? Or is that up to the publishers to develop this kind of platform?
No, so that's another way in which you could actually use our technology. So we have 3 key areas. One is Sana Learn, where you provide personalized content recommendations. You have what's called Sana Insights, where you could present key insights about the students to teachers as well as parents. And then you have Sana Voice, which is our speech recognition software for giving feedback on pronunciation. So those are 3 areas, and one of them is this Insight program, which is targeted towards teachers in particular, but can also be used for parents who want to get key insights on where their kids are struggling.
At the AI Summit earlier today, you mentioned that you don't even use the word AI when you market your product. Why is that?
So I think in some cases, we of course, and I think like one of our key taglines early on was AI for education. So we've been using it quite a bit in some ways, but when it comes to explaining this to publishers and education companies, I don't think necessarily that using AI is that important, because what they're really looking at is how can we improve learning outcomes for students, how can we help teachers, and then discussing it more as the problems you're solving rather than the exact tech specifications of how you're solving it is more effective. So I think like if you take a fridge, for example, when someone sells your fridge, they don't discuss the electricity that was sort of developed to power that fridge. They're just selling you a really simple way of storing your food. And I think that same goes for our applications. If we could give you a clear demo, here's the product, here's the value it's providing, here are key metrics that it has impacted, that's much more interesting than the sort of technology and algorithms that powers that. And I think we're going to shift that discussion very much moving forward. And I think most of the tools that we use every single day use AI, but we don't speak about it. Very few would think of Spotify's Discover Weekly as an AI-powered feature. They just think of it as a very good collection of music which they might like. When you do a search on Google, you don't think of all of the algorithms that went into doing that. You can try it, you can see that it works, and then you want to continue using it. So I think that shift will happen soon, where AI becomes much like electricity, something that just sits behind the hood and powers the services, but which we might not even notice.
And what's the strategy forward with Sana Labs? Are you scaling?
Yeah, so the US market is very key for us, and one we're focused on. And our end game is really ubiquity. So we believe very much in sort of the impact that personalized education for everyone everywhere could have, and that's really our ambition. So we want to make it really easy for these education companies to adopt Sana, get clear metrics of the value we're bringing to them, and do that at a scale across subjects and in most countries. But the US is going to be a key focus for us moving forward, and partnering up with some of the pioneering education companies there is what we're doing at the moment.
And how is Sweden doing in this sector, the edtech industry?
So I think we're doing good on some fronts. We've seen companies like NE and Glerups developing fantastic digital tools, which are starting to see meaningful adoption in the Swedish school system. We've had pioneers of digital exams like DigiExam that received quite widespread adoption in the US. So in a large extent, I think we're proving the value of EdTech and distributing it at a meaningful scale. On other aspects, I think the ones that have been primarily driving the user experience shifts in this industry, that have been adopting AI the fastest, are the consumer companies. So I think the expectations on these publishers' tools will start being the same as what you expect from a consumer company. And that means that in terms of a user experience, in terms of how you're adopting AI, I think the publishers will have to up their game in order to stay competitive with these more consumer oriented companies.
And what's your own background? How come you started this?
So I essentially started coding as a kid. So I was 13 when I started programming in C, and then went on to work on video recommendation engines and a wide range of other applications of machine learning. And then in my final year in high school, I set out to found Sana. So what I found really interesting was that I looked at it initially from a neuroscience perspective, and then I figured that we still know very little about how we learn. So a better approach to take is actually to use machine learning to figure out how we learn and then harness those patterns to personalize the learning. So rather than going to the best neuroscience research and sort of deducing the algorithms from there, you can learn from data how students learn. And that's the approach I set out to take. So apply machine learning to figure out human learning. And I did that the final year in high school, built a fantastic team of researchers and engineers who joined us from Spotify, Google, and Imperial College, and then went down to raise our seed funding from some great investors, some of the early Spotify team, Sophia Benz, who's now a partner at Atomico, and a range of other investors to sort of execute on this vision. And now some time later, we're here, and I think it's been very exciting journey, and also building more and more proof of the approach we've taken. So one proof was quite recently we won all categories in Duolingo's global AI competition, and that was really one of the testaments of that our approach is working. It's being benchmarked, it's being tested, and we're publishing openly around how it works.
Great. How old are you now?
22.
Nice job.
Thank you.
So what do you look forward to in the future? How will the future get better from here?
So I really look forward to humans being augmented. So if you take the best chess computer in the world, it beats the best chess player. But if you take the best chess computer in the world and combine that with a human, that beats the best chess computer in the world. So human plus machine is better than machine by itself. And I think that's what I'm really passionate about moving forward. How could we augment doctors? How could we augment teachers? And use the power of artificial intelligence to empower humans. And I'm also passionate about how this can solve some of the most meaningful problems in society today. So a lot of things like climate change, education, healthcare, it has these sort of combinatorial explosions, which makes it very hard for human researchers to understand them. So I think in order for us to really understand these very complex areas, we need to be augmented by artificial intelligence and its ability to learn from huge amounts of data. So I think human augmentation is an area I'm very passionate about.
Great. Thank you so much, Joel Hellermark, for joining here from Framtiden.
Thank you so much.
You can check out sanalabs.com.
Yes, we got the domain.
sanalabs.com. And let's hope that more students will be augmented by your technology in the future.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Everything you need to know can be found on hejaframtiden.se. We're back next week with something different. Thank you for listening.